You're such one for back from a video, not a reaction, a video. Yeah, you know what? I just felt like doing something different for a change. Like, I used to just randomly do like random things when I felt like it. I literally woke up like 10 minutes ago and I was like, you know what? I want to do it, so let me do it. I've been thinking about doing it for a while. I am a very, very big Lewis Hamilton fan, F1 fan. I've actually been watching F1 for longer than I've been watching football because we didn't have Sky Sports growing up. But F1 was always on BBC One. So yeah, quite literally, some of my oldest memories are, I remember when Lewis won his first championship, 2008, or I was 5, turning 6 that December. So I was literally 5. I still remember it to this day. So yeah, I remember all of his title wins. And this, you know what, this one is what I'm trying to remember too, but as it stands, like, we do not have this in the bag. But with that being said, the only reason I'm really doing this now, I literally woke up, went onto YouTube, and I probably watch more F1 content than any other thing on YouTube, whether it's Aldas, Tomo, The Race, Perspective, Cranky Yankee. Like, I really watch my friend Ben, BMPH F1. Like, I really watch more F1 content than like anything else. And how can I forget Josh? His name is Josh, but I forgot his channel name is Josh Revel. Like, I really watch more F1 content than like anything else. And I woke up, I go onto YouTube and I see Perspectives done a video saying it's all over for Max Verstappen. Now I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, that's the kind of title that makes you want to watch the video, because Max is quite literally leading the championship right now. I think it's by about 16 points, about 16 or something. Like, he's leading the championship. So to do a video saying it's all over for him is a bit like, are you sure about that? Like I think it looks like he's still currently the favourite. But with that being said, I think, because I follow him on Twitter, I think that video and the title is related to a tweet I saw of his yesterday, where they announced, not even announced, the F1 game published a video of like a demo of driving through the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And I can't lie, if you saw the Brazilian Grand Prix, and to be honest, how easy Lewis had it because of how powerful the car is right now, that track is very, very, very power hungry. Like, very, very power hungry. Like, there's just straight after straight, 3 DRS zones. There's certain tracks where there's only one. Yeah, I can't lie. We are in for a treat. Let me not lie. Like, there's no blunt way to put it. And yeah, whilst it's still looking good for Red Bull, like, as it stands, like, it's their championship to lose right now. In terms of the constructors, Mercedes, I think we will have that in the bag. But I don't know, man. Bottas needs to get his act together, because that one can easily be lost, because Perez is more often in the mix than Bottas. For the constructors, you need both your cars to be there if you want to win that. Like in the last race, for example, like Bottas really, I think he was kind of relying on Max getting the penalty, because when he finished the race, he was only 3.6 seconds behind. So I think Max, we'll get onto the penalty in a second, but I think Bottas changed the way he was driving in the context of, this guy is going to get a 5-second penalty. If I stay within 5 seconds, I've got myself a second place, when I wasn't even really in the mix like that. However, yeah, I think Perez is just a more consistent driver than Bottas. So in terms of the constructors, that is really Red Bull's championship to lose. No, Mercedes to lose, but it could very easily be lost because of how consistent Perez is in relation to Bottas. But in terms of the main drivers championship, yeah, going into these next few races, I saw someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone said that they are all effectively unknown quantities, because even Abu Dhabi, which we've, as fans and drivers, they've become accustomed to racing there. We've become accustomed to watching the races there. And we always call it a boring, it's not even too boring, because it has provided some entertainment. I think it was 2010, the one when Alonso got stuck behind, I think it was Petrov. Yeah, that was an entertaining race. It was fairly entertaining. But otherwise, like, having that instead of Interlagos as the last race, I'm not too sure about that. But we got to live with it. But they have changed the circuit. So effectively, they haven't raced on that layout yet. That's the fact. They haven't raced it. So we don't know how much of a difference it's going to make. But Qatar, I think it's Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, we have not raced there before, but by the looks of Saudi Arabia, that does look like it's going to suit the Mercedes more. So yeah, going into these last few races, theoretically, we have no clue what's going to happen, but we can make an inference that Saudi Arabia should be, by the looks of it, is Lewis's race to lose. If if his pace on the straight is anything to go by. That race is nothing but straights. Like, those corners are just there for decoration. they're just there for, like, to fit the requirements. I'm sure those race regulators, if they really could have, the people that designed that track, they would have just made it a straight line. They would have made that a drag race, I can't lie. But I'm not complaining, because as I said, like, our straight line speed right now is immense. But I want to kind of brush on the last race and kind of just this season overall, because I have been watching every race, but I haven't made videos on any of them. Like, I've been contemplating at different parts of the season. Like, I want to make some F1 content, but just don't know what to talk about. But like, yeah, like, this championship is definitely something to talk about. Briefly brush over the incidents. In chronological order, I think Imola was the first one. I thought Max should have been given a penalty, but I think it's because it was the first lap they allowed it, and I was less incensed because it was the first lap, and that's the closest the cars could potentially be for the whole race, depending on how strategy works. Especially as a pack, that's the closest the grid is at the start, so they are normally more lenient towards the start. But sometimes it's still, though, if you make a big mistake, they will punish it. But stuff like that, just forcing someone off, if they're right next to you, fair enough. So I was like, alright, cool, fair enough. Then we had Spain, where Max, I think Lewis was even ahead, but then Max dived in and then effectively forced him to make a decision. You're either gonna crash into me or you're gonna let me through, mate. Like, if I were you, I'd just let me through. So I wasn't happy with that. And then Christian Horner literally made a comment afterwards saying that, like, Lewis had to yield or they would have crashed. Like, he just said it in passing, but it's the fact that he's aware of the fact that Max is putting other drivers in these situations. I was just like, noted. I felt like the stewards noted. So yeah, after that, then I think it was Silverstone. That one was bad. But yeah, even if that one, I thought that was more of a 50-50. Even the stewards, I think, thought it was more of a 50-50. But Lewis was more to blame, so he got the penalty. But he still won the race anyway, so I don't really care. And then I remember that outrage on Twitter at the time was the fact that Lewis still won despite the penalty. But the stewards can't take into account what may happen as a result of the penalty. Like, they can only take into account what they've seen and what the issue is. And now I think we're skipping over Monza, because for me that's open and shut. If your car's on someone else's car, or you've put your car in a position where it can end up on top of someone else's car, I think you have to, at some point, you have to take the blame for that. So I'm not even going to talk about that. But yeah, now that leads us to Brazil, where I think, like everyone else, fundamentally it was weird that they didn't even look at all the evidence. I think the fact that there's an onboard footage somewhere on earth, that onboard footage exists, because I haven't seen it. I don't think anyone else has seen it. The F1 Twitter account hasn't posted it, so I don't even know if it exists, but I'd like to assume they have onboards of all the cars all the time. I think it's very weird that it's suddenly gone missing on the titled leader, like the championship leader. His car doesn't have like an essential piece of camera footage. I think that's very, very weird. But otherwise, yeah, I just think it's weird that they haven't released that. The only reason they haven't released that is because it just doesn't fit the agenda. And the agenda is, let them race is just an excuse to not penalise Max at this point, because Lewis has been the one winning every single year, bar 2016, since the hybrid era started. And yeah, it's best for the sport if someone else wins. Yeah, cool, but do it cleanly. Everyone was getting onto Lewis for cheating when it was literally a malfunction in the equipment that led to a 0.2 millimeter. Do you know how small a millimeter is? Millimeter's like 10% of a centimeter, and even a centimeter is tiny. So 1% of a centimeter difference, and people are saying they're cheating. Like, you quite literally can't see that with the eye. Like, you literally can't see that with the eye. That's something you have to get under a microscope to see the difference. So yeah, for them to say they're cheating because of that, I thought that was a little bit petty, very weird. But when Max is quite literally, again, put Lewis in the same ultimatum as he has in Spain, as he has in Monza, where you either move out the way and let me through, or we crash and we're both out. Like, how does that sound, mate? Just, if I were you, just let me through kind of thing. Or, you know what, just don't bother trying to overtake me. Like, I know we're racing, but I don't like being overtaken. So if you're going to try and overtake me, I'm not gonna let you do that. So I think it's a little bit weird that for them to not even investigate it. Like, Michael Massey was bare, like, I remember, like, Martin Brundle on the commentary was saying, like, how sarcastic he was being. Like, he sounded so dismissive when Red Bull would talk about let them race. So I was like, yeah, he obviously doesn't want to hear it. For him, it looks quite open and shut. Because if that happens on any other part of the grid, if you're just not letting someone overtake and they end up in a wall or something, then we can all agree, okay, you've crashed another driver out of the race or forced another driver out of the race, open and shut, that's your penalty there. Or like Alda said, if it happens further down the grid, if that's a battle for 10th, say it's like Sonoda trying to overtake Giovinazzi, for example, on that part of the grid, and he forces him off, it's an open and shut penalty because Giovinazzi's going to get on the radio, Alfa Romeo are going to get over to Michael Massi. We can all agree that something bad has happened here. But I think it's quite literally because it's the title contenders and it's the battle for the lead and all the focus is on that. For the sport, technically, it is better to have the deciding factor of the race winner be decided through an overtake. With that being said, I think that's the reason they didn't give it, because if they gave what should have been given, which is a 5-second penalty, I think we can all agree on that. Or I've seen other people suggest that maybe just tell Max to just let him pass like he did in Bahrain, first race of the season, although that was different because he made the overtake illegally and then had to give it back. But this would have been him not letting him pass in the first place and then just letting him through because he had track position until you force him off the track. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it is better for Lewis to overtake him on track, but I still think Lewis would have overtaken him anyway. I think what the difference would have been is Bottas was 11 seconds behind Max when that was all going on. If Bottas then somehow ends up second in the classification, but third on track, because then you only close the gap by 7 points. If you win, they come second. But if Lewis wins and Max comes third, I think the gap closes by like 12 points or something like that. I think, isn't it 18 for second, I think 15 for third. So actually, no, the gap will close by 10 points instead of 7. So yeah, then Lewis has even less work to put in for the rest of the season. So I just think it's a case of they didn't want a repeat of Canada 2019. But Canada 2019 was bad, and that was at the start of the year. If it was towards the end of arguably the most tense championship battle since at least 2012, yeah, the state of F1 Twitter this year has been bad. If the championship was decided by that, I don't think anyone wants to see that. I can't lie. Like, it would have got disgustingly out of hand. But even with that being said, Max fans will cite Azerbaijan as, oh, he would have had 25 points if he won that, which is fair, and it wasn't even his fault. But then we can just retaliate and say, yeah, but if Lewis doesn't look up in that same race, he has 25 points as well. So that race was kind of void. But otherwise, Monza, you can just say that if Max doesn't put his car on top of Lewis has the race win there. So like, there's loads of if, buts, maybes, but I think the FIA didn't want any of that. They just wanted, you know what, forget it. Let's not create hypothetical scenarios. If you overtake him on track, your car quite literally looks quite much faster. Overtake him on track. I think they kind of knew Lewis was going to get the overtake done anyway, but I still think it's a little bit weird that they didn't even look at all the evidence. Because I can't lie, whilst it's best for the sport, what's the point of having rules if you're just gonna waive them when it suits you? That's not how things work. And when there's quite literally incidents that you can cite from earlier in the season where it is quite literally copy and paste of the same thing. Another driver forces him off the track. He gave a 5-second penalty. It happened to Norris and Perez in the same race when they did the same thing. It just doesn't make sense that later in the season, when the context is kind of different, you just forget about the rules that you have. I just don't think that's how they should be doing this. And that's why immediately I tweeted that it's just a very dangerous precedent to set, because it just means you're telling the rest of the grid, yeah, you know what, you can do that. Because then you can't let them do that because they're fighting for the championship, but then not let them do that because they're fighting for 5th place. Like, it just, that's not how things should work. So yeah, going into these last 3 races, I think Mercedes really have a better chance than other people think we have. I remember going into Brazil, I was like, you know what, I can't lie, because I don't like to admit it. I've never had to admit it for the last 7 years, that, you know what, maybe we're not going to win this thing. Maybe 2016 was decided in the last race. So I've never, for as long as I can remember, because if it wasn't 2007 and 8, Lewis was never really in the championship battle. Even 2010 and 12, he was kind of there, but then when it really mattered at the very end, it was Alonso and Vettel. But yeah, it's a weird feeling to kind of accept that, you know what, maybe we're actually just not going to win this year, because we have been getting very used to just Mercedes winning, not domination. 14 to 16 was domination, I admit, but 17, 18, especially 18, Ferrari should have won, but Mercedes being the better overall team prevailed in the end. But yeah, it was a weird feeling going into this weekend, genuinely saying to myself, you know what, I can't lie, for the first time in years, we might have to just accept that we just don't have enough to win this. But then Lewis reminded everyone that why he is undoubtedly the greatest of his generation, and arguably the greatest to ever do it, because he quite literally, like WTF1 said, completed and lost the first challenge in real life. Like, you can say whatever you want about the engine being tuned up, but all that means is just that because reliability is making sure it can last the whole season. If there's only 3 races left, like, reliability kind of goes out the window. Let's just make this engine as fast as we can. So yeah, they have tuned up their engine. There's nothing wrong with that. But even with that being said, like, how much faster? Because even Bottas wasn't going that quick. I think I read somewhere that they've only tuned up Lewis's engine. I think Bottas' engine has been left alone. It's Lewis's engine that they've really done the work to. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. After Brazil, after that, I think sometimes even I forget like quite how good Lewis actually is. Turkey last year was a nice reminder, but because he is always just, he gets pole, and then he just leads from there. He just doesn't make mistakes, but you don't get to see him in the action relative to how everyone else is always overtaken. It's rare that we see that. But yeah, Turkey 2006 when he was still back in F2. I think people forget that this is the same guy, but even with more experience than back then, that this guy really knows what he's doing behind a race wall. So yeah, it was a nice reminder this weekend that with effectively a 25 place grid drop to still win the ultimate race was nuts. Like, you can say whatever you want about how fast the car is, like, you can still make mistakes, especially when your car's that fast, because then you have to really think about your braking and stuff. And the fact that he was still able to do all of that, I don't want to call him a GOAT. I don't really think you can say there's a GOAT in F1. I've seen many people say this because of how much the sports has changed and stuff. But of his generation, it's not really up for debate. And that's why this title battle is really interesting, because Max is one of the closest, especially on natural talent, to him that we've ever seen, to be fair. And that's why it's interesting seeing them fight. But I think, my closing statement, I think, whilst we should let them race, because that's what everyone wants to see, it's a racing sport. I think, if you're going to start waiving the rules for the context of, they're fighting for the championship, we don't want it to be decided on penalties. My thing is, just don't do something that warrants a penalty if you don't want the championship decided on a penalty. Because obviously Red Bull fans are going to be incensed if this finishes with Max crashing Lewis out and they give him a 10-second penalty or something, and then Lewis goes and wins the race. Like, if he doesn't crash him up, but crashes into him, and then Lewis goes on to win the race, and Max has a 10-second penalty, it's gonna be World War III on F1 Twitter. But I'm just gonna be like, I can't lie. If you don't want it to be decided on penalties, don't do something that warrants a penalty. Like, it's that simple. So yeah, man, I've talked for quite a while. I didn't actually think I would talk for this long, but being serious, like, I'd probably put F1 above football in my own personal sports rankings. Like, I have an F1 Mercedes top. I do have an Arsenal kit in the wardrobe, but yeah, I probably wear this one way more. I just watch F1 more. I think, I've watched more F1 races than football matches. I don't think it's even close. Like, excluding match of the day, because that doesn't count. But like, times I've actually sat down and watched the match from start to finish, I've done way more F1 races than football matches. So yeah, man, this is my primary sport. Whether or not I do more videos like this, I might do one at the end of the season. But I just think now is a very interesting time to make videos, because after Brazil, like, this really, Lewis has opened his championship right back up. Even if if Lewis doesn't have the weekend he has, even Red Bull would be ahead in the constructors as well, because like I said, Perez is really up there. Bottas isn't normally up there, but even Bottas, he got the 3rd place. That was calm. But like I said on Twitter, I think the word clutch isn't really used in an F1 context. It's more basketball. Michael Jordan against the Utah Jazz 1998 in the last second of the game getting the winner, that's clutch. Or Ronaldo Champions League final against Juve scoring that against Juve 2017, that's clutch. But like, in F1, like, the word clutch isn't really used like that. Like, even like the one clutch moment you can think of, if Lewis overtook Glock, that's clutch. But it's the fact that Glock his tires were gone, that's not really a clutch overtake like that. Like, with context, it's not really a clutch. Technically he overtook him, but it's not really a clutch overtake because we know why he overtook him. But I think the weekend Lewis just had, if he does go on to win the championship, but even as it stands now, the fact that he's even opened up the championship again, I think that's the most clutch thing I've ever seen in F1. Like, the fact that I'm even thinking about whether or not you can use the term clutch, I think it says a lot, because that was just nuts. Like, I don't think we'll see something like that for a while, if ever again. Like, that many penalties given, and you still win the race. Like, having to start from last, and then coming to finish 5th in the sprint in 24 laps, and then getting pushed back again and still winning the race. I don't think we'll see that ever again, I'll be so real. And that's because I think Lewis is just the greatest of his generation. And even if you did put them all in the same car, it would be interesting to see what happens. I'm not gonna say he would have definitely beaten Michael or Fangio and Senna. We'll never know. But yeah, definitely his generation. I don't think anyone can really chat to Lewis. Anyways, yeah. So we'll see if I do more F1 content. This has been fun. I can't lie. This has been very, very fun. And it's my passion. I can't lie. F1's like my proper passion. So yeah, man. I've been searching 1-4. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. I'll be back again soon.